May 6, 1873, Labette County, Kansas. Bodies are being uncovered in the rural Kansas prairie. Men and even a child have gone missing while traveling along the Osage Mission Trail, a major travel corridor through southeast Kansas. But when a posse of 50 men go looking for one doctor who disappeared in this area, they all discovered more than they bargained for. This is a case so shocking it gripped a nation for over 50 years, yet it remains unsolved over 150 years later. It is a story of greed, brutality, and one of the greatest mysteries in the American criminal history. Because how does an entire family of serial killers simply vanish into thin air? This is the story of the Bloody Benders, Behind the Curtain. Hey y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Potto. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our friends all the way over there in Bulgaria.
Bulgaria.
Dobre doshu.
Very nice.
There you go.
Well, wherever you're listening, be sure to like, rate, and review Hitched to Homicide. Tell your friends all about us.
Please do.
Go out there and share, because sharing is caring, and caring is what, honey?
Caring is love.
Caring is love. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below.
Mm-hmm.
If you want true crime with us all the time, please go join our In-Laws and Outlaws group in Facebook. All you have to do is go to Facebook, type in H2H In-Laws and Outlaws, answer a couple questions, and you are in.
Yep.
We love those people. We're growing by leaps and bounds in there. So welcome to all the new in-laws, or if you're an outlaw, like we're talking about people today. You can find us on Instagram at Hitched to Homicide, or on X at H2H_podcast. And we also have a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to send the redhead some coffee. He drinks it every episode. He's on his second cup.
Mm-hmm. And it used to be redder.
Until he met me. You can also send us a message or a text, and that is at the bottom of the show notes where it says, send Chris and Rob a text or message. And I want to give thanks to Millie Cole for suggesting this case.
Thanks, Millie.
Now, let me set the scene for you.
Okay.
It's 1870s.
Right.
Ulysses S. Grant is the 18th President of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of reconstruction happening following the Civil War. The Department of Justice had just been established, and a man named Hiram Rhodes Revels is the very first African American in Congress. The South is recovering, and people are moving west.
Go west, young man.
And that's where we're going today.
All right.
I would say before we get started, let me thank some sources, but I didn't write them down today, and I don't know why.
Oh, well.
But you can find all our sources. You can always find all our sources in the show notes, and I never list all of them anyway, because it's always a very long list.
It's a very long list. All right. Well, you ready?
I am.
Let's do it.
In 1871, America didn't quite look like it does today. At the time, the western border of the United States were the states of Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, and Texas, and everything else was labeled a territory, including the Kansas Territory, which was spelled with a Z, Kanzas, on some maps. It was derived from the Kansa Native American tribe, who are also known as the Kaw, who originally inhabited this region. Their tribal name translates to people of the south wind. But I will say it's early French explorers and traders who translated their tribal language to Kanza or Kanza with a Z or an S, which is eventually going to turn into Kansas.
Got it.
It's just one of the new territories established after gold is found out west in California and Colorado, and the Great Plains are just swarming with people, men, women. I read they were the educated, the ignorant. They were robbers, saints, and sinners.
Everybody was heading west to get the gold. There's gold in them there. Hills.
They were, and towns were popping up everywhere, and the families that were moving west were looking for a better life, but they didn't call it the Wild West for nothing.
And it was wild.
In the 1860s, the Osage Indian Nation, who'd settled in Kansas following the Treaty of 1825, sent numerous appeals to Washington complaining about the number of violent men and outlaws who were putting their boots up and making themselves at home on their territory.
We did an episode on the Osage.
We did, the Killers of the Flower Moon, exactly.
Yeah.
But they send all this message to Washington and nothing was done. Now, they will sign the Drum Creek Treaty in September of 1870 and sell their land for $1.25 per acre.
That's outrageous. Gosh.
And move to Indian Territory that will later become Oklahoma. And because they moved, these plots of land are now up for sale. And people came from all around to buy a plot of land or two and start a new life in the Kansas Territory along the Osage Trail near what would later become the town of Cherryvale. Now, in October of 1870, two men arrived at a trading post in Osage Township in the northwest corner of Labette County. One was young, the other was old. The young man introduced himself as John Gebhardt and said that the older man that was with him was his father, John Bender. And he says, "We want to buy some land," right?
Right.
John Bender was around 60 at the time they showed up in the Kansas Territory. He was described a few different ways. In fact, there are no photos of any of these people ever taken. But one of the descriptions is that John Bender was big and tall with tan skin and long hair that was kind of wild. He spoke German. I also read he spoke some French and a little bit of broken English. And John Gebhardt was said to be around 25 years old and is described as being handsome, tall, and slender. He had gray eyes, brown hair, and a mustache, and he could speak both German and English.
Okay.
So these two are taken out and shown the plots that are available. These are the plots in this area that are available, just like a real estate agent might do today. And within the week, these two bought two plots of land that were 160 acres each, so a total of 320 acres for, you want to guess how much?
Let's see, carry the one. I have no idea.
$36.
What?
Which is equivalent today to be about $1,200,
Wow.
which is roughly $2.75 an acre. Do you want to know what that land sells for today?
I'm going to guess it's a little more than $1,200
Between $5,000 and $9,500 an acre.
Wow.
In other words, it would cost you about $2.25 million today, at the very least, to buy this land.
Man.
Now, over the next 3 months, John and John start setting up a homestead on their 320 acres. They built a small, simple cabin that is only 16 by 24 feet. They do it on top of a sandstone slab that they used as the floor. And underneath the slab, they roughed out a cellar that was 6 feet deep and created a trapdoor in the middle of the cabin to provide access to it. That's called foreshadowing. Yes. Now, they didn't just build a cabin. They also built a barn, a corral, which I read was rickety. And by December of 1870, their work was done. They would wait until spring before filling the barn with cows, pigs, and chickens, but they did start to lay out a garden, an apple orchard to be exact, right behind the house.
Okay.
Now, these two men, John Bender and John Gebhardts, didn't socialize very much. Apparently, the elder John wasn't the type to chat people up, because I read that when he would visit the trading post, he would play cards, but he really wasn't the friendly type. And the younger John called him Pa Bender. And soon, all the people around them started calling the older John Pa Bender, and the younger John just John Bender instead of John Gebhardt.
Got it.
In the spring of 1871, Pa Bender puts a sign above the front door of their cabin that read, "Groceries, GROWCRIES."
Maybe that's because the tomatoes weren't fully grown at the time.
I think there was just a problem with the spelling.
So obviously they were first-generation immigrants from Germany.
Supposedly,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Now, it was said that they didn't really sell anything worth buying, and most of the time, Pa Bender would chase people off with a gun. So talk about customer service.
Yeah, he needs to work on his marketing skills.
As for John, well, a lot of people looked at him and said, he ain't right.
You think?
He had a habit of laughing at absolutely nothing at all, and people started to think that perhaps he just wasn't right in the head. He was a couple sandwiches shy of a picnic or a couple bricks shy of a load, right?
Or 2/8 notes short of a measure.
Yes. I liked that one.
There you go. My little musical reference for the day.
In March of 1871, Pa and John were joined by two women. Ma Bender, Pa's wife, also known as Elvira or Almira in some sources. She was around 55 or 60 years old. And Katie, or Kate Bender, and she was between 23 and 25 years old, and is described in some sources as pretty, well-formed. I liked this one, buxom. In fact, she had dark eyes, high cheekbones, and long auburn hair. Can't trust the ones with red hair. And despite the story that she was the daughter of Pa and Ma, she looked absolutely nothing like either one of them.
So basically, they were just kind of hanging out in the East, waiting for them to get settled so they could join them.
Yes, they were waiting for Big John and Little John to get settled, and then they sent for the women folk.
I wonder how they communicated that. Was it just by telegram, or
I think telegram. Yeah.
Get your butt out here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe a letter, Pony Express.
Carrier pigeon.
Something. I mean, the Pony Express was out west,
That's
so
true.
You write a letter to somebody. 6 months later, it arrives.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And I get upset when things don't arrive in New York City that I send our daughter. I'm like, what is going on?
Or when an email doesn't get there within 30 seconds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it was said that Katie was a skilled horsewoman, and she had a noticeable scar under her left eye, and she spoke English very well. She also spoke German, and there are sources that she would speak French with Pa on occasion. And here's the thing about Katie. She believed in free love.
Yoo-hoo.
And within a few days of arriving, every unmarried man in the area was finding a reason to come to the Benders' homestead to meet the buxom Katie and perhaps have a roll in the hay. Now, there are sources who believe that John and Katie are brother and sister, and that's what they were trying to pass them off as, their brother and sister.
Okay.
And perhaps they're brother and sister in an incestuous relationship, and there are others who believe that they're actually a couple, that they're married, because they acted more like husband and wife, and in fact, there will be a neighbor who will later say that Katie told her that she and John had been married for some time.
Got it.
Again, there are lots of stories, some of them conflicting as to what is true and what's been fabricated over the years. But according to some sources, within weeks of arriving in Labette County, Katie Bender made a name for herself. She would attend church on a regular basis with John in the town of Harmony Grove, and she made friends in the towns of Independence and Cherryvale. She took singing lessons and went to town meetings and would visit other women in town to share a cup of tea and a little bit of gossip. And again, because she believed in free love, many a man showed up at the Bender Inn to have a few drinks and play cards with the other men folk, and then maybe catch a glimpse of Katie and have a chat, and if Katie's feeling generous, perhaps a roll in the hay. Another thing about Katie, she said that she could speak with the dead. Hang on to that little tidbit for a moment.
All right.
Not long after the women arrived, the cabin was split into two areas, divided by a canvas. I read that the canvas was the canvas cover from a wagon. And at the back of the cabin, there were two beds, the cooking area, a kitchen table. The front of the cabin was a general goods store, like a dry goods store.
Right.
And the sign that used to read groceries
Yeah.
was now spelled correctly to just groceries.
Okay.
The Benders started to advertise their cabin as an inn. They put out two benches in front of the house, and Katie would greet people with a smile. I bet she did. She met them with a smile and a hearty stew and an offer of shelter for the night. She'd order them to sit with their backs to the canvas, and she would chat with them while she served them food. And then she would leave them in the front room to settle down for the night. Now, the next morning, they'd stock up on provisions, enjoy a big breakfast, and then head off, resuming their journey to whichever neighboring town they'd been traveling to.
Okay.
But not all of these travelers are going to make it out of the Bender's Inn alive.
Uh-oh.
Now, some of the timelines differ. So if you're a Bender expert and you don't think I get these in the right order, I just really want to get the victims in there, okay?
Yeah. Well, and if you're a Bender expert, let us know. Yeah, we want to know what the actual timeline is.
Sure.
Bring it on.
Well, I did my research. It's just that some of them are different from each other.
Sure.
And it's because it's 150 years old.
Exactly.
Now, one of the friends the Benders made was a man named Edward Erne. He was a German businessman, so you can see the attraction. They could speak in the native tongue.
Mm-hmm.
In February of 1871, Edward wrote to a Mrs. Foster in Germany asking if he could marry her daughter, and also asking if the two of them would consider moving to America and Kansas, where he could take care of the both of them.
Okay.
And these two women agree, the mother and the daughter. So they sold their belongings and left for America with some jewelry, traveler's checks worth $3,200, and a trunk of clothes. Now, these same traveler's checks would be worth about $87,360 today. And the fact that there were traveler's checks back then really surprised me.
Were they American Express?
I don't think they were American Express. A couple months later, in April or May of 1871, the Fosters arrive. Edward, who's friends with the Benders, tells them, "I've arranged for you to live with my friends, the Benders, while I decide where we're going to settle." To which I say, come on, Edward. Come on, man. You asked in February. It's now April or May.
Yeah.
Dude, you should have figured this out, right?
Yeah. There's not a whole lot to do back then.
Yeah.
It's not like you're programming a computer.
Look, if the Benders could, buy 320 acres, come on, Edward.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I can only imagine the Foster women arriving in Kansas in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the plains, and finding out that they're going to share a cabin with 4 other people that is 16 by 24 feet. And just for reference, I looked this up. This is the size of a standard 2-car garage.
Yeah. Well, the booth that you're sitting in is a 15 by 15, so just expand that a little bit, and you've got a whole family living in there.
I got Benders living in here, and it's divided. Remember, with this curtain.
Yeah, because you've got the general store in the front.
That's right.
Wow.
It's only 384 square feet.
It's like living in New York.
Yes, but that would be a little not an efficiency. What are they called? It's a studio.
Yeah,
That's a studio apartment. But these two, I digress. These two foster women are going to stay with the Benders for a while Edward figures out his situation.
Okay.
But despite the small size of their new living quarters, the Fosters didn't seem to complain. They reportedly enjoyed talking to Katie and John, who could both converse in German with them and would tell them stories of the new frontier. And they would talk about what was going on back home in Germany.
Right.
Then one day after the Benders and the Fosters were out looking for Native American artifacts that the Osage tribes had left behind, Ma Bender is out there with them, and she's like, I'm tired. And Pa Bender's like, I'll take you home. And Katie and John and the foster women just keep looking for these artifacts.
Okay.
But when they made it back to the Bender house, Mrs. Foster looks to her daughter and says, here are the things that we found. Why don't you put these into our trunk for safekeeping? And when the daughter opens the trunk, she sees that the box that contained their jewelry and their traveler's checks was missing.
Oh.
And there's no one around for miles.
Yeah, they're out in the middle of nowhere.
So the Fosters immediately look to the Benders and they're like, what gives?
Excuse me.
Yeah. Katie tells them that they had nothing to do with their missing jewelry and money, but Mrs. Foster and her daughter demanded to be taken into town, and they packed up all their stuff and they wanted to leave. And John Bender takes them into town, and on this hour-long trip, he tells the Fosters that there are a lot of horse thieves in the area, and maybe one of them had been to their cabin, to which the Foster women said, that's a load of horse hockey.
Yeah, exactly. It's the only thing they stole.
Yep. And that's exactly what they said.
Yeah.
That's just a load of horse hockey.
Yep.
When they get into town, they tell Edward Earn, and old Ed is angry. And the next day, he confronts the Benders at gunpoint, but they insisted that they had nothing to do with the missing jewelry or the money. So Edward and the Fosters reported the theft to a man named Leroy Dick, who was Cherry Vale's town trustee. He's like the closest thing to a sheriff or a mayor or anybody with any little bit of authority.
Mm-hmm.
But they had no proof that a crime had been committed, and there was nothing for Leroy to do other than canceling the traveler's checks and getting in touch with the German consulate.
Sure.
But from that moment on, Ed was determined to keep an eye on the Benders. He's like, I'm watching you.
Yeah.
I got my eye on you.
Well, there you go.
By May of 1871, Katie was working as a waitress at the hotel in neighboring Cherry Vale, and this is when she began to advertise her services as a spiritualist and a healer. She can talk to the dead and she can heal you. She even put an ad in the local paper that read, Professor Ms. Katie Bender can cure, get this, blindness, fits, deafness, and all such diseases, also deaf and dumbness. Well, I thought she already said she could cure deafness, and I bet people who knew John, who thought he was a brick shy of the load, was like, well, why can't you do something with John if you can cure dumbness?
Yeah, exactly.
She said she was a medium and would host seances in the hotel where she worked in exchange for a fee. She also would go to other towns other than Cherry Vale to peddle her services and invited people to come to the Bender cabin if they wanted a more personal experience.
Would these be air quotes?
Yeah, make of that what you will.
All right.
Also in 1871, a man named William Jones, a farmer from Montgomery County, was helping to build a schoolhouse in Osage Mission. He was only expected to be gone for a month, and when he was coming home, he had $250 in his pocket that he was planning on using to settle a loan that he and his wife Martha had taken out to buy their new farm.
That's it?
That's
$250?
$250.
Wow.
But it is believed that William Jones stopped for the night at the Bender house. Now, we don't know exactly how the evening went down, but we can speculate pretty easily based on everything we now know. During dinner at the Bender home, Katie, who would charm the guest, would seat them with their back to this canvas curtain. Then, while William Jones was eating, either Pa or Ma or John would use either a shoe hammer, a claw hammer, or a 6-pound sledgehammer to bash the victim in the back of the head, while Katie would lunge across the table, or it could have been Pa or Ma or John, depending on where they were all working.
Right.
But someone would lunge across the table with a knife and cut the neck from ear to ear.
Oh.
They would then search the body for valuables and money, open the trap door to the cellar, and throw the victim down to bleed out.
Wow. Kind of like Austin Powers. Sorry. I know this is not a laughing matter.
William Jones will be found by 2 boys who are fishing. He's floating in Drum Creek with his head bashed in and his throat cut. And not long after, 2 unidentified men were found dumped on the prairie, killed in the exact same manner as William Jones, their skulls crushed and their throat cut.
Wow.
The bodies were found on the property of Mr. R.M. Bennett, and everybody believed that Mr. R.M. Bennett had something to do with their death. And Mr. Bennett, in turn, insisted that anybody and everybody was welcome to search every square inch of his property, and the men who took up his offer discovered that there were wagon wheel tracks in a patch of dried mud near the creek. And one of the back wheels was wobbly and left a distinctive track in the mud.
Yeah, kind of like forensics today with tires, rubber tires.
It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It was then speculated that this would result in the wagon making a rattling sound as it drove. And after the men had inspected Mr. Bennett's wagons, they confirmed that it did not have wobbly wheels and didn't rattle. So Mr. Bennett was no longer a suspect. In the months following William Jones' murder, 4 more men disappeared after passing through the area. 29-year-old Henry McKenzie was from Indiana, and he was one of them.
Okay.
He'd been on his way to Independence, Kansas to visit his sister and stopped in Cherryvale to say hello to his cousin, Leroy Dick, Cherryvale's trustee, the only guy with any authority in town.
Yeah.
He spent the night there, and Leroy and his wife warned their cousin Henry that men had been going missing in the area. And Henry is a soldier who fought in the Civil War, and he's like, look, I can take care of myself. Henry stayed the next night in the home of J.H. Sperry, a local homesteader, and left for Independence, Kansas, the following day. But Henry would never arrive.
I mean, can you imagine you survived the Civil War?
And you get taken out by the Benders,
Jeez.
by Ma and Pa Bender.
Man.
Yeah. 40-year-old Benjamin Brown from Cedarville in Howard County had traveled to the Osage Mission Trail with $50 in his pocket. He wanted to use the money to secure a loan so he could buy a farm for himself and his wife Mary and their daughter Cora. Well, he was denied the loan, so he headed to Independence, Kansas, to try there. He traded for a new horse in Ladore, Kansas, a place that had earned the reputation as one of the wildest towns in Kansas, but he will never make it to Henry. One thing about Benjamin, he wore a silver signet ring on his finger.
Yeah, a silver ring, that's pretty much worth him dying for.
Maybe.
Yeah.
A man named William F. McCroddy. He's an Irishman from Cedar Vale, Kansas, which is 64 miles from Cherryvale. William served during the Civil War in the Illinois Infantry. He's on his way to the land office in Independence, Kansas, to settle a land dispute. And he arrived in Ladore hungry, broke, and tired, and he needed a place to sleep. and a man named Dan Gardner gave him 25 cents and told him, if you need some place to lay your head, check out the Bender place.
Lay your head. Well, there's a bad choice of words.
He never made it to Independence, Kansas.
Wow.
In the winter of 1872, a 30-year-old blacksmith from Independence, Kansas, named George Newton Longcore, was moving to Iowa along with his 19-month-old daughter, Mary Ann. They were going to live with George's in-laws in Iowa after his wife and his son had passed away. Oh. Now, his wife's name was Mary Ann as well. George and little Mary Ann say their goodbyes to their good friends, Dr. William York, and his wife, who was also named Mary, lots of Marys. And they were off to Iowa in a new wagon with a team of 4 horses. What could go wrong in a brand new wagon with 4, count them, 4 horses?
Wow. They're a big target.
It was the middle of winter, and a sudden cold front hit, and the snow was nearly impossible, and it was so frigid that George worried that little Mary Ann would freeze to death. So they pulled up to a cabin in the middle of nowhere, hoping to find shelter for the night. They stopped at the Bender cabin. But then the new year came and went, and George and little Mary Ann still hadn't made it to their grandparents' house in Iowa. I mean, that's a trek. It was going to take them a while to get there, right?
Yeah.
So these grandparents wrote to Dr. York, who was a former Union Assistant Army surgeon in the 15th Regiment of the U.S. Colored Infantry. He was actually captured by Confederates and taken to Camp Ford in Texas, and had all these scars on his body because of that.
Sure.
And then he married his sweetheart, Mary, and these two moved to Independence, Kansas, where they started a family. And he and Mary met George Newton Longcore after his own wife, Mary, and his son had passed away. By the way, Dr. York is also in his early 30s.
Okay.
So the grandparents to little Mary Ann and in-laws to George Newton Longcore, they contact Dr. William York, who tells them that he was already planning a trip to Fort Scott, where his father lived, and decided that along the way he would try to figure out what happened to George and his baby girl. And Dr. York left for Fort Scott on March 3rd, 1873, and he spent the night in Independence, Kansas, where he had a visit with his brother, who was a senator, Colonel Alexander York. And then he traveled to Moorhead, where, according to newspaper reports, a wagon was found abandoned. Dr. York sees this wagon, and he knows immediately that it belonged to George. So he tells the local authorities that he believes something is amiss.
Right.
And then he went on to Fort Scott, where he spent 4 days visiting with his parents and buying trees, shrubs, flowers, and vegetable seedlings to take home to his wife so they could make their garden bigger. It was a gift to her.
Oh, that's nice.
Also living in Fort Scott is Dr. York's other brother, Ed. So there's Dr. York and there's Colonel York, who's also a senator for the state of Kansas. And then
there's Ed.
There's their other brother, Ed.
Ed likes to fly under the radar.
Poor Ed.
Yeah.
Also, while he's with his parents in Texas, he buys a, quote, very fine horse and a new saddle and bridle. And on his last night in Fort Scott, he told his dad about George and little Mary Ann disappearing. And he told both of his brothers that he was going to stop at every homestead along the route that George and Mary took. And then he was going to gather a group of men to help him look for them when he got back to Independent, Kansas.
Okay.
And then Dr. York and his father wrote a letter to his brother, Colonel Alexander York, who was this U.S. Civil War vet, and he's also an attorney and a member of the Kansas State Senate, and to the sheriff in Independence to let them know about his plans to stop along the way and question people, and that he thought he would be gone 10 to 14 days. So Dr. York is like thinking ahead. I'm going to go question these people, and I might run up into some nefarious characters. And my plan is to be gone 10 to 14 days. So if I'm gone longer than that, y'all need to start looking for me, kind of thing, right?
Right.
When Dr. York didn't make it home, a search began for the missing doctor, led by his brother, Colonel York, and a company of 50 men. Some people called it a posse.
Yeah.
They questioned every traveler along the trail and visited all the area homesteads. And on March 28, 1873, Colonel York arrived at the Bender's Inn.
Dun, dun, dun.
Kate and John Jr. answered the door, and they tell Colonel York that Dr. York did indeed stay with them and that he probably ran into trouble with Indians after he left the inn. And then Colonel York, get this, he stayed for dinner.
No.
So Katie must have been pretty charming. Colonel York, you need to stay and eat dinner.
Wow.
He does survive dinner, but there were 50 people outside watching out for him.
That helps.
And looking for his brother.
Right.
But over the next few days, Colonel York keeps questioning people, and he learns that a woman had recently been seen running and screaming out of the Bender's Inn because she said Ma Bender had threatened her with a knife. So on April 3rd, Colonel York goes back to the Bender's place with his 50 men to have a little chit-chat with Ma Bender, who tells him in broken English that she was angry with this woman because she was a witch who had cursed her coffee.
And don't mess with someone's coffee.
Apparently not. And this is when the colonel realizes, he's like, hold the phone. Ma Bender, who has always feigned ignorance when it came to English, Colonel York realizes she does speak English. She does understand English.
Yeah.
And he thinks the whole thing is hinky. And Ma Bender told the colonel and his men to leave. Get out.
Wow.
But before he did, Katie goes to the colonel and says, you should come back alone tomorrow night. And she would, with her psychic abilities, find Dr. York. Professor Ms. Katie is going to find Dr. York.
And of course, the colonel bought into all that.
Yeah, at this point, the colonel knows. And I think the 50 armed men know that the Benders are the reason that so many people have gone missing.
Sure.
And the colonel thought that it didn't smell right in the Bender's Inn.
Right.
But he didn't think it was just the Benders. He thought that there was a neighboring family, the Roaches, that they were also in on all these people disappearing.
Oh, yeah, those pesky roaches.
I mean, I was thinking, it's the Roach Motel. Roaches check in,
They
don't
never
check out.
check out.
But there were plenty of folks who wanted to hang the whole lot of them, the Benders and the Roaches. But Colonel York, who's an attorney and a statesman, says, we need proof. By the way, the Roach family will eventually be cleared.
Okay.
John Bender offered to show Colonel York and his men where a band of outlaws were known to hide out. And then he spent the afternoon laughing to himself as these men searched this area. It was like he sent them on a wild goose chase. Now, mind you, a lot of the people they were questioning didn't take too kindly to the way they were sort of manhandling their investigation.
Yeah.
Apparently, Ed York, who's out there asking questions too, outright accused more than one person of murdering his brother.
Wow.
And one of those people was actually James Roach, who wrote to the governor, Thomas Osborne, asking him to intervene in the search because, quote, we are all poor and we want help from the state and we want it now and we need it so that we will spare no time until we bring the guilty parties to justice.
Wow.
End quote.
That was kind of eloquent.
It really was.
Yeah.
Now, Colonel York returned to Cherry Vale, and the colonel wrote his own petition to the governor asking for his assistance in capturing the organized band of outlaws, and the governor agreed and declared a reward of $500 per head for the capture of the persons responsible for all the disappearances. And when the York brothers and their posse stop outside Leroy Dick's house, they ask him if there were any suspicious folks around, and he told them all about the Fosters, the mother-daughter who stayed with the Benders and lost everything, and about how there were rumors that the Benders were up to no good in the middle of the night. My mother always said, nothing good ever happens after midnight.
That's what we tell Scotty when he runs out the dog door.
It is. There's nothing out there for you. There's nothing good happening after midnight. But it's at this point that all the neighboring areas started pointing fingers at the Osage area, saying that they were responsible for all the disappearances. Don't look to our town. It's over here along this Osage Trail. That's where it's happening.
Right.
And then on April 8th, a meeting was held in Harmony Grove, and 75 locals attended, including Colonel York, and maybe even, I read, the Benders. And this is when, after talking through all the disappearances and the 3 bodies that had been found, they all agreed that they would get a search warrant and search every single homestead from top to bottom between Big Hill Creek and Drum Creek.
Wow.
But before they could even begin, there was a report of another abandoned wagon on the outskirts of the town of Thayer, which was a busy railroad town. The horses were still hitched to this wagon, and the horses were starving to death. So they feed and water the horses, and they take the wagon back to the local stables for safekeeping.
Okay.
But on the back of the wagon was a loaded rifle and a wooden sign that read groceries. GROWCRIES.
That's just coincidence.
And even though Colonel York believes that the Benders are behind at least some of the disappearances, no one was really watching them. So he leaves that night, he hears all these things, and nobody's really keeping an eye on the Benders. I guess they just didn't have 24-hour surveillance at the time, right?
Yeah.
And 3 days later, after the township meeting, a man named Billy Toll, who was driving cattle, went past the Bender property and noticed that it looked abandoned. But more than that, their livestock looked unfed, and most of them were already dead. So this man quickly reports this to Leroy Dick, and the next morning, Leroy and 2 other men go to the Bender homestead. But a mess of bad weather rolls in, and it's several days before the cabin can be investigated. So he gets everybody together, we're gonna go, and then it starts raining. So much so that they can't get out there.
Yeah.
Now, after the rain passed, a few hundred volunteers showed up to search the Bender cabin, but it was empty.
Really?
Although it was messy, it looked like they had made a quick getaway. They did find a Roman Catholic prayer book in the house with notes on the inside written in German that said, Johanna Bender, born July 30th, 1848. John Gebhardt came to America July 1st, and then it was 18 ? And in an old Bible, which was also found in the house, it was written, quote, Big Slaughter Day, January 8th, and, quote, Hell Departed, end quote.
Wow.
But that's not what they noticed the most. Not that it's empty, not that the animals are dead or starving, not the Bibles. It was the smell. There were flies everywhere.
Yeah.
And 3 men find a trap door under a mattress, and when they opened it, they were hit with a stench that, quote, almost drove them from the house, end quote.
Yeah.
Almost? Seriously?
Wow.
I guess the Old West smelled bad to begin with.
Well, people didn't take showers every day.
I would have been long gone. But Leroy is thinking the Benders have left a dead body in here. And Leroy reported what they found to Colonel York, and when he arrived, he said it smelled, according to Colonel York, like a battlefield after a few days had passed.
Wow.
Now, this group of men broke up the sandstone floor with sledgehammers, and even though there was nothing underneath, no bodies, there was blood soaked into the soil below. So the men physically pick up the cabin and move it off the slab, and they begin digging under it, but they find nothing. So there's this cellar, and it's gross and stinky and covered in blood, and there's been so much blood that it has soaked into the soil around it.
Wow.
So these men start poking around the property, and it didn't take long. Ed York joined the search that afternoon, and they searched the apple orchard because it looked like there was fresh earth. It looked like graves. And the first body found was that of Dr. York. He was buried face down and barely under the surface of the earth. They would uncover 8 bodies in total.
Jeez.
The bodies were placed in wooden coffins and left next to their grave so they could be identified. Ed York ID'd his brother, Dr. William Henry York. Leroy Dick identified the body of his cousin, Henry Mackenzie. William Crotty had a tattoo on his forearm that listed his name, date of birth, and his regiment. Benjamin Brown was identified after a horse trader from Ladore recognized his silver signet ring.
There you go.
A man named James Freerick was ID'd by a neighbor, and the body of a man named John Geary or John Boyle was found in the bottom of a well on the Bender property.
Jeez.
George Newton Longcore's father-in-law came in from Iowa to look for his granddaughter and his son-in-law, and had the sad task of not only identifying George, but also little Mary Ann. She is the only one who has not had her head bashed in or her throat cut. But she was wearing mittens, and inside the mittens there was dirt, which led people to believe that possibly they had buried her alive. The coroner would later explain that the men had most likely all stopped at the Bender Inn, and all were people that the Benders must have thought wouldn't be missed by any of the locals. Their unlucky guests then sat with their backs to the canvas that acted as a divider, and it was Kate's job to distract them with food or conversation. Then someone, either John Bender or Pa Bender, would then repeatedly hit them over the head with one of the 3 hammers that were found inside the cabin. Their bodies would be placed next to the trap door before their throats were slit, and they would be left to bleed out. And once that was done, their bodies were buried near the orchard.
Wow. That's just amazing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Wow.
Now, the cause of death of the men buried in the orchard matched the cause of death of William Jones, the man whose body was found in the creek, as well as the cause of death of the 2 other men who'd been murdered while camping nearby.
So, even though they didn't stay at the Bender's place, they still got their heads bashed in and
their throats cut.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were also added to the list of the Bender's victims, bringing the total to 11. In the coming weeks, the authorities learned that the Benders most likely murdered their victims so that they could steal their horses and whatever money they had on them. John Bender was a horse thief, and he would take their victims' horses and whatever valuables they had and meet up with an outlaw from Texas named Frank McPherson, or a member of the McPherson gang. And the McPhersons would then buy the horses and whatever loot John Bender had on him and then travel back to Texas to sell them. And this was supported by a witness statement by a horse trader from Albuquerque in New Mexico who admitted to buying Dr. York's horse a few weeks after his murder. On the 17th of May, 1873, Governor Thomas Osborne published the following proclamation. Whereas several atrocious murders have been recently committed in Labette County, Kansas, under circumstances which fasten beyond a doubt the commission of these crimes upon a family known as the Bender family, and whereas said persons are at large and fugitives from justice, now, therefore, I, Thomas A. Osborne, Governor of the State of Kansas, in pursuance of law, do hereby offer a reward of $500 for the apprehension and delivery to the Sheriff of Labette County, Kansas, of each person named above. So a $2,000 reward.
Hey, $2,000 back then was a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
In the days and weeks after the bodies were discovered in the orchard, the stories that were told about the Benders became more and more sensational as time went on, and newspapers got a lot of details wrong, and even today there are differing stories in the sources online. But one thing everyone seems to agree upon is the Benders' killing method.
It was like a killing machine.
It really was.
Yeah.
Now, although some of the victims were wealthy, others carried very little of value with them. And it was surmised that the Benders had killed them simply for the sheer thrill of it. Now, the Bender family sold stolen goods, such as horses, saddles, clothes, and other possessions, under the guise that people who spent the night there were unable to pay would give them things. And at another time, a Mrs. Fitz, while sitting at dinner, became uneasy and sensed a muffled movement behind the canvas, and Kate issued some sort of command, but before anything could happen, this woman gets up and runs away. Two other men who had traveled to the inn to experience Kate Bender's psychic powers stayed for dinner, but refused to sit at the table next to the cloth, instead preferring to eat their meal at the main shop counter. And Kate then got mad. And shortly afterwards, the Bender men come from behind the cloth. And at this point, the customers are like, "We out.
Yeah.
We're gone."
I'm tapping out.
When they did look through the Bender's home, there was more than a dozen bullet holes found in the roof and the sides of the cabin.
Wow.
And the media speculated that some of the victims had attempted to fight back after being hit with the hammer. Now, this story broke in 1873, and more than 3,000 people, including reporters from New York City and Chicago, visited the site. But the Benders would never be found. Never. But there are some conspiracy theories on what happened to them after. Bender expert Phyllis De La Garza has proposed a controversial theory about the fate of John Jr. and Kate Bender after the family disappeared from historical records in 1875. And according to discussions of her work, De La Garza identifies a couple in Missouri and Colorado named Joseph and Katie Bender as actually being John Jr. and Kate Bender. However, critics have noted, quote, numerous red flags and illogical leaps, inconsistencies between De La Garza's claims and sources such as census records, and contradictions about this Missouri-Colorado couple she identifies as the fugitive Benders.
And she's the expert?
She's one of them.
Oh, okay.
And another expert, in her book, Hell's Half Acre, The Untold Story of the Benders, a Serial Killer Family on the American Frontier, Susan Jonassis, I think that's how you say her name, explores several theories about the Benders' true identities and their fate. And her primary theories include that they were not a biological family. She theorizes that the Benders likely weren't related at all, suggesting that Ma and Pa were probably married or common-law partners, and Kate was probably Ma's daughter, but John Jr. was actually Kate's husband rather than her brother, based on the way they interacted with each other. And as far as their escape, well, she believes that the family disappeared before authorities could apprehend them, with their ultimate fate remaining unknown despite search parties and investigating lasting over 50 years. People looked for them for 50 years.
Wow.
She also believes that the victim count is uncertain, and while 11 confirmed victims were found, Jonassis notes that locals believe the Benders may have killed more than 20 people, given the many mysterious disappearances of travelers in the area. Now, the enduring mysteries surrounding the Benders include their fate after fleeing Kansas in 1873, with theories ranging from a successful escape to being lynched by vigilantes. And additionally, archival sources suggest photographs of the Benders exist, but no confirmed images have ever been authenticated, leading to speculation that, quote, the photos could be sitting in an antique shop somewhere and we won't know it's them, end quote. Now, hundreds of people visited the Bender Inn in the days following the discovery of the bodies, and people stole everything. They all wanted a souvenir.
Sure.
However, no one has ever claimed the $2,000 reward that was placed on their heads, despite Colonel York paying 2 detectives, Thomas Beers and Charles Peckham, to find the Benders. And many believe they were taken care of by these vigilantes. And there were just people who wanted them dead, but didn't want anyone to know that they did the deed, so they didn't come for the reward.
Sure.
But in order to remember those whom the Benders killed, here they are once more: William Baldwin Jones, Ben Brown, William Frank McCrotty, Henry Mackenzie, Johnny Boyle, George Newton Longcore and his baby girl Mary Ann, John Greery, Red Smith, Abigail Roberts. There were 6 unidentified men found, one thought to be Jack Bogart, whose horse was sold to a friend of the Benders after he went missing, and of course Dr. William Henry York. There were also various, get this, body parts not belonging to any of the other victims buried.
Wow.
They are believed to have belonged to at least 3 other victims. In total, it's believed that in Kansas alone, there were over 20 victims of the Benders. And other than Mackenzie, York, McCrotty, and the Longcores, none of the other bodies were claimed, and they were buried in Montgomery County, southeast of the Benders Orchard. These are now known as the Benders Mounds. All in all, it is estimated that the Benders took roughly $7,500 from their victims, which in today's money is over $200,000.
Wow.
What was left of the Benders' property is on display at the Cherry Vale Museum. Now, the Bender property has been owned privately since the 1960s, long after all the souvenir seekers were gone.
Yeah.
And as recent as 2025, last year, the University of Kansas anthropology students and faculty conducted archaeological field schools on the site to locate the exact positions of the house, barn, and graves.
Really?
The precise location of the cabin and garden remains uncertain, and researchers are, quote, pretty confident the property has never been fully scanned for additional bodies, end quote.
Man.
The current owner has expressed interest in uncovering new answers about the case. So, they were talking about doing all this just last year in 2025. So could 2026 be the year that we learn even more about the Benders?
Sure.
But that is the story of the Bloody Benders. That's not the kind of bed and breakfast you want to stay at. And that's all I have to say about that.
All right, my take on the whole thing is that it's just really messed up. But the one thing I kept thinking about, though, is, we think about traveling and we get on the highway and go. Back in the 1800s, talking about the gentleman with his young daughter.
Yes.
And it was snowing and cold and dark. And, there's no street lamps. There's nothing out there. It's just black.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine. And then you go to this place and you're unalived, as they say on the internet. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and then thrown in through a trap door.
Yeah, yeah. And
with
that
your
poor
throat
little
slit
girl.
so you can just bleed out.
Yeah, that poor little girl.
I know. Tragic all the way around. 4 horrible, horrible people.
Yeah. Well. All right. Well, that was depressing.
I'm sorry.
Let's get something a little more stupid with a little bless your heart.
Well, bless your heart.
All right, number 1, I'm calling This Close. This took place over in England. A cab driver and a really young snobby guy in the taxi. He was a first-year university, best guess. He was pretty wasted and fairly aggressive.
Okay.
They got to his parents' house in a decent area of town, and he had no money on him, so he nipped inside to get some. Back and forth various times, but still no money. All the time being aggressive. Finally, he coughed up just over half the fare. Quote, let me do it in my best English accent. That'll have to do for you, he said. You can call the police if you want, but I doubt they would waste their time on chasing up a few extra pounds in a well-to-do middle-class areas such as this. Go on, toddle off then, he added, motioning for the cab driver to leave. He did. But as he drove away, the guy stood triumphantly in his doorway, a broad smile on his face, and his middle finger extended proudly in the direction of the cab, completely oblivious to the fact that minutes earlier he had handed his iPhone over as collateral.
Oh.
Oops.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. All right, number 2. Something smells rotten here.
Well, that sounds like our case.
I know.
Today.
It's kind of coincidence. And this took place over in Scotland.
Are you going to do a Scottish accent this time? Because I don't know about that English accent.
I know, it was poor. Okay, police responding to a vehicle collision on the Langstract in Aberdeen noticed Stuart Cook, 28, speaking to the driver of another car.
Okay.
After observing a strong marijuana odor emanating from Cook, officers searched him and his vehicle, finding a small amount of cannabis. All right.
Okay.
Police handcuffed Cook, who immediately began to scream and act aggressively. He was brought to the police station in Kitty Brewster, where he was booked and strip searched.
Oh.
During the procedure, officers claim Cook passed wind intentionally multiple times. Cook deliberately farted in the direction of the officer 3 times, stating, "How do you like that?" reported prosecutor Lucy Simpson. Cook pled guilty to possession of cannabis and to behaving in a threatening or abusive manner.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he was admonished without penalty for the drug charge, but has been ordered to perform 75 hours of community service after intentionally passing gas as police officers conducted a body cavity search.
Oh.
You can get away with marijuana, but don't you dare fart.
He's out there picking up trash for it.
That's it. All right, number 3, and finally. How'd that work out for you? This took place in Boston.
Okay.
Authorities say
Boston.
Authorities say a 25-year-old Ruddy Rodriguez was among a group of 10 to 15 people driving ATVs and other vehicles erratically on Providence streets. Police say Rodriguez drove through a red light before mounting a sidewalk, causing pedestrians to run out of the way.
Oh.
Police say he taunted officers, yelling, "You'll never catch me," when he crashed into a large cement potted plant on the sidewalk.
Oh.
He was then caught by police and arrested.
Rats.
Oops.
I was thinking, run as fast as you can. Can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man.
There you go. Oh, man. I just love the fact, "You'll never catch me."
You'll never catch me.
Bluey.
Boom. You're like, yeah, about that.
Think again.
Well, if you have a bless your heart, or you know somebody's heart who needs blessing, all you got to do is go to hitchedtohomicide.com. When you get there, there's a pull-down menu. And while you're there, you can also suggest a case like this one was suggested.
Yep.
Or tell us about your brush with true crime.
Please do.
That's my amazing, patient, fantastic husband out there.
And that's my beautiful, beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next time on Hitched to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.